Good evening, everyone. I know that the Friday mood is setting in. Hopefully, we don't disappoint. And we are here to talk about AI. We're at that inflection point in marketing where things are changing like never before, or as we've never seen since the rise of mobile and social. And this time, it's not a shiny channel or not a shiny platform. It's really fundamentally changing the way we make decisions, the way we execute, the way we think. And it's here to stay. There's a bit of a fear around that AI will take a marketer's job. It won't. However, marketers who use AI more efficiently, more smartly, more intelligently, will definitely be ahead of the ones who don't, and that's what we are here to talk about.
You mean
What
to
we
say we'll
will
take the job of the ones who don't? Right, you can
Probably, yes. I'm just gonna be brutal by saying that. What we'll dive into is a VC perspective as to how founders are thinking about it and how can they integrate AI into their marketing systems, and also how big brands are thinking about it. So let's dive into it. Vishy, I think you really have a bird's eye view of what is happening in the founder ecosystem, where capital is flowing. What are the biggest disruptive innovations that you're seeing in the VC system that you would actually want to highlight and talk about?
Okay, let me set this up. So, quick context, I had marketing at Elevation, which is a VC. We've, for the past 25 years, invested behind companies right from Paytm, Meesho, ShareChat, Swiggy, to a bunch of investments right now. And AI is big, right, across the overall Indian VC ecosystem, the global VC ecosystem. The way we look at investments and overall company creation activity in this overall space of AI and where capitals flow, I think the largest place where money is going at this point in time is obviously into infrastructure, right? Between the Google, Meta, Amazon, these guys are pumping in a lot of money, essentially giving money to NVIDIA to buy chips, create data centers, create cloud compute, with the hope that people like you and I and everyone else is going to be having a dramatic upsurge in terms of their AI utilization and use cases. And that is insane, some $300 billion, as I said, and it's very difficult to wrap your mind around, but it is essentially a bet saying it's going to come any moment now. If we leave that part of capital aside, essentially the AI stack sort of falls into three broad layers: foundational models, middleware, and applications. If you look at the foundational models, it is essentially your OpenAIs, your Anthropics, etc. There is still a lot of funding activity and a lot of news and event constantly around it. OpenAI raised 40 billion last week, and there's a question on what are they going to do with it at this point in time.
At a 300 billion valuation.
At a $300 billion valuation. But I think the broader view on the foundational model layer seems to be that the large players have pretty much sort of emerged. And most of the activity is now going to be at the application layer and at the middleware layer on how do you take those LLMs, how do you sort of create agents in an enterprise setting or create consumer applications from a consumer setting, right? So we've not necessarily seen too much of activity in India, and I think there's always been this question of where are India's foundational models, but I think we believe that irrespective of whether we have a foundational model or not, middleware, application layer, there is both a massive potential and a right to win for Indian founders to build something. That largely comes because I think there is a very deep, high quality tech pool that is available in India. And also over the last 10, 15 years between IT services, between SaaS, we have built this capability to go and sell to enterprises or create apps that can sell to consumers across the world. So there is this belief that very large application plays are going to happen out of India. So that's essentially where we have a lot of excitement, right? An application layer could be in an enterprise setting, it could be vertical apps like, an application sitting inside a fintech company that does fraud and anti-money laundry detection and incorporates into the workflows. And that is something we just invested in a company a couple of weeks ago. It's still in stealth, but they already have a bunch of production happening with large banks in India. So I think one thing that we are seeing is that unlike the past waves, most companies are leaning in on AI, right? If I go back again to the bank example, banks took a lot of time to get onto the cloud because there are a lot of considerations around data and security and managing compliance in a banking setting. AI is fundamentally different across a bunch of verticals and sectors because every leader and every sector and every organization is leaning in rather than waiting to see what can happen. And everybody is trying to figure out what is possible, what's happening, what are the POCs we can run. So that's very interesting for us, the entire application layer in an enterprise setting. But what I'm personally most excited about is essentially the consumer application side of things. And there are 2-3 reasons for that, right? So one is we both spent time at Hotstar, right? And one of the things that we used to take a lot of pride in, we used to do these induction decks where we would show newcomers that Hotstar was the fastest app to get to 1 million downloads on the App Store, faster than the Facebooks and the Instagrams of the world. Facebook took 54 months to get to 100 million MAU. Instagram took 30 months. TikTok took 12 months. ChatGPT took 2 months. Right? So if you look at one vector of why are the consumer application side of things interesting, it's because adoption is just insane. And you can see that I saw a Ghibli image on stage right now. Right? Altman put out his image generation model last week. And all of us have either created or seen something on our feeds. Right? So that creation vector and adoption vector is massive. If you add on top of that what social media apps in general have done over the last 6 years, as Monica was saying, it doesn't matter if there isn't too much of an audience here because what we're trying to do is create content, right? And we're trying to put it up on the platform. So we are all content creators. Everyone here, a lot of us here are going to go back, put something up on LinkedIn, hopefully get a little bit of engagement. We'll figure out what is the hashtag. That's what we will do in our personal lives also on the Instagrams of the world, right? So fundamentally, these apps have made us all content creators. We are constantly looking to create content. Now, if you marry these two trends of insane adoption with this leaning in psyche of all of us as content creators, and then you add the final magic ingredient, right, which is AI that can genuinely create stuff. Today, we have, say, a 4.0 where you can give it a text prompt and genuinely get images that you can put as a marketer onto at least digital marketing. You have apps like, then you take that and you put it into Runway ML and you can probably create a 15-second video out of it. The most interesting segment in AI application space for the last 6 months now have been apps like Lovable, Replit, and Bolt. What are these? These are apps where you can go and put in a text prompt and it will create an app for you. It will create a website for you, zero code. Right? So it is completely disintermediating folks who can write code, folks who can translate a code into Figma, into design, into code, into backend and front end. You can do it on your own. Right? So now you have all of us chomping at the bit to create content, and you have tools like AI which enable you to put in a text prompt and create a web experience, create an ad, create a video, create a film, right? So if all of this comes together, we believe that is the absolute holy grail. And fundamentally, we believe everybody is going to be a creator, massively supercharged by all of these tools. For me personally, what that means is anybody who works in marketing, anybody who is a brand builder, anybody who is a founder, especially at this point in time, cannot lean back and sit and think, hey, let me figure out, these workflows are a little complex, so maybe we'll figure it out after 6 months. I think you have to jump in. And it might be a little frustrating, but you got to do it, is the way I see it. Sorry, a bit of a long ramble, but I was just trying to join some dots together. But even as I'm thinking and saying this goodies, right? So I can see even, and at the end of the day, we are a VC, we are a small org, and one of the things we are also trying to figure out is how do we get AI into our workflows? How do we ensure that those founder conversations are flowing into some sort of an AI tool and we generate insights and it goes across the fund? And I'm sure large orgs are struggling or trying to grapple with this. And we've chatted, and I know that Coursera is sort of on the one of the better sort of case studies on that. Why don't you talk about your experience on that?
I think before I go into that, I wanted to comment on something you said. Like, content creation has become so democratized. Any marketer today will have to be a content creator. And I think there's a lot of buzz that happens to really say, will it take the job of a content creator? It probably won't, but mediocrity won't stand out because every brand manager is going to have the access to the same content. How do you apply that human insight, but do things faster, more efficiently, go to market faster is really, so I think it's an interesting point you made that everybody is a content creator. And if you're a marketer, you'll have to think as a content creator. Changing games to Coursera, I think Coursera has been on the forefront of really AI adoption, and the case study was actually featured at the Harvard Business School. It was one of the few ones who went into AI adoption very quickly, primarily from a customer experience standpoint, and this is how some of the big levers were. Number one, they looked at AI-powered translations. These were ML translations, lip sync, etc. I kid you not, Vishy, from the point of discussion to implementing translation in over 17 languages across the world. This was Greek, this was Spanish, this was Arabic, etc. To really gain access to content and education, it happened over a span of 3 months. Now, this coming from a content world, I can tell you, we've been at Hotstar. We know the amount of dubbing budgets it would take, getting a quote out and dubbing. I mean, imagine all of this happening in 3 months. It actually happened.
3 quotes takes 3 months sometimes.
Yes. The second interesting case study, and I think this is what caught a lot of the eye of a lot of the tech world, is really developing an AI-powered coach. Now, if you are in EdTech, you would understand that the buddy system, so what Coach really did was it looked at creating modules with you. It looked at simplifying concepts with you. It looked at doing problem solving with you. So this inertia of I'm doing this content alone actually went away. Another interesting point where Coursera was seeing a lot of pain point was working with traditional universities who were creating content. I mean, it takes a lot of time to build course modules, etc. What they did was they used AI to actually work with these universities to really say, how do we then start building content modules, which made content production much faster. It cut down a lead time of 3 to 4 months of just iterating with the teaching assistant to really say what I want to talk about, to really actually creating it. Then also moving a step forward and packaging all of them in a generative AI academy. We realized through a lot of searches which were happening on platform that a lot of people were looking at content in AI specifically. And this was the one massive inflection point that Coursera was seeing. A lot of people were searching for Coursera for AI academies. And then looking and using AI to create those modules, what it basically did was a Google generative AI content married with an IBM and really putting it all together as a consumer to make it very simple for you that if you want to learn this concept, I have these 4 courses, I'll simplify it for you. And coming closer from a marketing perspective, I think there were many examples, but I would say the biggest where Coursera really saw a difference was CRM. Initially, it was such a siloed process wherein you were taking a look at audience creation on one platform. You were literally, it was creating tickets to really build content, then looking at a separate platform for optimization and platform management to actually conversion. It all converged into one platform, you would see. And there were many use cases of marketers using writers, AI, etc. Or even, I think the common examples everybody knows about are really using in performance marketing with PMax or Advantage Plus, which I'm not going to go into. But I think there were many other use cases where marketers at the fringe were actually using it, which were very interesting case studies, I would say. So I would say it was a combination of really having AI champions, but also looking at the consumer experience to see how you can fundamentally disrupt something.
Interesting. So then, see, I think one of the challenges that I face also is as I work with some of my portfolio founders and their marketing teams, I think a lot of people are looking for clarity on, hey, where do we start? What do we do first? And I think solutions for small teams are a little easier. You can just push them saying, hey, let's do something. But for a large team, like the team you led, how do you think a large marketing team should go about incorporating AI into their stack, into some of their execution level thinking and execution?
Interesting. And I think Sundar and I were just having these conversations before, right? I mean, as a CMO, how do you really empower your organization to do so? I think fundamentally, I would say 3 principles that really come into play. Number one is really, and this is hygiene, which I saw at least in the company that I worked for, is clean up your data. I mean, like having clean data, it's garbage in, garbage out. So making sure your data taxonomy is actually consistent, your tagging is consistent, you have one unified view, etc. Invest in MarTech, invest with your analytics team to really clean up your data. I would say will be a one big starting point to start with. The number two thing I would say is there is no one solution of implementing it. It's not top-down strategy decks, or it's not just encouraging things top-down, but really empower the junior-most members in your team at the grassroots probably are more well-versed. So remember when the wave of digital happened and there was a thing of reverse mentoring in digital? Yeah. I think it's the power today that you may have reverse mentoring for AI. Get the junior-most members in your team and ask them what they use. We were discussing how they're using Midjourney to create concepts, and people don't no longer go to agencies and say, create a concept for me. Or literally looking at Canva Studio, not going to an agency and saying, I'm going to use Canva Studio and I'm going to churn out multiple creatives and I'm going to go with performance marketing much sooner. So I would say strategic plan, but at the same time, empowering the grassroots level, having a strategic thought on how you're creating digital champions. And interestingly, some companies are taking the route of actually having AI officers, and they haven't figured out what these AI, and having a task force to have marketing along with product. Because today AI mostly sits in the product function. Bring it back and have marketing, product, etc., all integrated to see how you can implement AI. And without talking a lot, I think the last one is a lot of people struggle on where do I get started? We all know the case studies in terms of performance marketing, but I think is there anything beyond that? The question is, where are your biggest problems to solve? And where can you create biggest case studies that you can roll out? Just a sandbox example, today you can get insights from a sprinkler or a brand watch. You don't need really long, and you were talking about how hundreds and thousands of transcripts of a call can now really be done so quickly. To really creating concepts with a Canva or Adobe Firefly, for example. To really looking at implementing these campaigns with real-time optimization, looking at CLTV to be more predictive and not a fixed LTV, creating, and it's a lot of education for the finance teams who are so used to a traditional ROAS methodology, etc., to really automation of CRM. I think there are many applications. You just need to see where your biggest problem is and start somewhere. And I'm going to double down on what you said. Don't wait. Just start doing. Don't wait for a 2-year plan to be perfect or a strategy deck. Just start doing. But really changing gears, this is really from a big company perspective, right? Where moving things are very different. Where do you see, and what's your advice to founders? Where are you seeing how founders are using it with a lot of agility? And you work with so many of your portfolio companies. Give us some rich examples that people can take away to see how it's really helping.
Sure, let me do that. But I think a couple of memory chords you struck. One is, don't take 2 years for a plan. I remember back in Unilever, we used to have this digital upskilling course that we had to do. And then there was this clock that would go up on how many percentage of the people in the team have done that course. And it was a 2-year plan to get people comfortable enough with digital. And those were really
Proctor's was even longer.
I am not surprised at all. But right, so I don't think AI is one of those waves where we can spend 2 years, 3 years to casually upskill ourselves. It's also not one of those things, as you said, right, where what is your biggest fire? That is what you need to figure out. Where is it that you want to use AI, and not saying where do I have the least risk. I think, especially as brand marketeers, I think, and as marketers in general, approach always is how do you minimize risk. But I think at the speed at which things are going, if we keep waiting for minimizing risk, I think other brands, other content creators are going to come out and create content, formats, etc., experiences that you will then be left, like a lot of large brands already are left scrambling, right? I think that's probably a takeaway for me. The other thing you mentioned, Sprinkler, right? So just out of curiosity, one of the big exercises we used to do at Hotstar during IPL, once IPL launches, was, IPL has launched, we do not have enough people on the platform. Why are there not enough people on the platform? Did your marketing hit enough people? Yes, I think I spent enough money. Then did we create buzz? Okay, how do we measure buzz? We would go to Sprinkler and wait for 4 days for a buzz report to come out on IPL saying, pre-buzz tournament, these were the topics that people used to talk about during tournament. This is what people are talking about. I was just curious, because I live in an IPL mad household. My 8-year-olds are crazy. They wake up at 5:55 in the morning because they can't watch the second innings and come to my room, take my laptop to see what the score was. So my belief always is that people are crazy about the IPL, but I thought, let me ratify it. I went to Grok. I spent 2 minutes in putting out a query to compare what the buzz has been for the last 3 years on IPL, and it breaks it down so beautifully. You do not need insane large consumer listening tools to get a basic pulse of what is happening around you. So if you're again in a large brand, there is a lot of information, there's a lot of insight. Social listening doesn't have to be a complex task. It doesn't have to be a brief that goes to somebody and then you wait for a few days for somebody to churn it out. You can do it yourself. Very quickly turning it around to what founders, smaller orgs, smaller marketing teams can do, are doing, or maybe some of the stuff that I'm doing personally, right? If I break it up into 3-4 different aspects, I think consumer research, especially in smaller companies, I find them not necessarily having a research muscle as much as large companies have, and I've always felt that when I go speak to a small founder, we put out the product, we don't quite know who's the consumer, why is it working, what is the insight, and then we push them to say, okay, let's do a bunch of consumer calls, let's try to figure out what is the insight here, especially as brands scale, they hit a ceiling on PMF, you need to figure out where is the next consumer PMF going to come. I'll try to be very fast. But one of the things we did was we did 20 consumer calls, and I did a bunch of them. They were across a bunch of languages, and because I was actively moderating the calls, I did not have a way to take all the insights down. It took half an hour of tooling to figure out, but it was easy enough to extract all the audios, put them through a tool which translates and transcribes all the Hindi calls into English, and then take all of those 20 transcripts, put it into a Notebook LM, and run a project on Notebook LM where you query that itself. You can create an insight document, you can create a mind map, you can generate insights, and in 3 days, or literally in a day after you finish off your consumer listening, you are in a place where you can get into a room in a conversation to say this is insight, right? Same for image generation. 4O is at a crazy good space. You can literally generate creatives that can go on to your performance marketing today. Video will get there in the next 3 months. What else? I think there's a lot of tools that one example which was absolutely mind-blowing for me was we had Friedman talk to Modi 2 weeks ago. 11 Labs, which is an AI app, takes that and converts that, dubs it into all the languages in the world. There is an AI founder called Sync.so. He takes those dubs and he creates a lip sync version of that dubbed video, right? Because it is very jarring to see Modi mouth Hindi but Russian come out of his mouth. But the minute you're able to do that Sync.so, it's a significantly better experience. The way it comes into reality is that I'm speaking to one of these marketing heads in one of my podcasts. We have a Hindi creative. We want to put something into South. We don't have a South creative that we have made. We are not quite sure whether to invest because the South market is good enough or not. Take that asset, extract the text out of it, the transcript, put it through Claude 3.7, that gives you a Tamil script. Put it through 11 Labs, that gives you the Tamil audio. Put it through a Sync.so, that gives you the lip-synced Tamil audio. Put it out and you see whether the creative is running or not. And then you at least generate internal conviction that you spend on it, right? So sorry, again.
No, yeah. And I think we're out of time, but I think what I took away, and then one message that we were discussing, right? A single founder creating a 100 crore business without a team, just using AI, is not science fiction.
Absolutely not.
It's not science fiction.
Sam Altman talks about the $1 billion, the unicorn single founder. I don't think that's happening anytime soon. But if you look at everything that's happened in the last 5 years in terms of the enablement through a Shopify, the enablement through QuickCom, third-party logistics, third-party everything else, production, it is very possible today for a founder, once he starts integrating these tools to, in a very lean organization, create a brand, put it out there and scale well. So to me, to founders, small teams, it's like absolutely dive right in right now.
Yeah, so be it a founder or a brand, we are AI ready. I think on that note, I'll hand it over to the next session. And thank you for having us, MMA.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, rightfully, the mics are back, but can we please request both of you to stay back with us? We just allow the opportunity of inviting Deepak Oram, Senior Vice President, Growth Marketing and MarTech of HDFC Bank, to help us in giving a token of appreciation to our speakers. Let's give Goodies and Vishwanathan a warmer round of applause and appreciate the conversation. Goodies, thank you so much. Let's bring them in the center, of course, the right frame. There are a lot of cameras, Deepak, you have to focus on, but right in the center would be encouraged. Ladies and gentlemen, let's encourage them with a warmer round of applause. And thank you so much, Vishwanathan, for joining us today. Let's get them in one frame. Goodies, if you can just stay back, we'd like you in a group photograph as well. Let's give Vishwanathan a warmer round of applause. And if you could just have the three of you in one frame, we'd encourage the hashtag Data Unplugged moment right there. It was great to hear the perspectives from both our leaders, Goodies and Vishwanathan. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your time.